This movie is about how you can show internal structure of classes in class diagrams. We'll look very briefly at the idea of composite structure diagrams, how they're used for collaborations, and how they can show composition instead of using composition relationships. Within UML, diagrams that show internal structure of classifiers are called composite structure diagrams. This approach is used particularly in component diagrams, where the internal structure of components is shown in terms of other subcomponents, or ultimately the classes that implement the components. In class diagrams, this kind of internal structure can show inner classes, as in the diagram here, which shows a Java graphical user interface class with an inner class that provides a callback for responding to button clicks in the user interface. The names in italics at the top right of each of these classes are the names of superclasses, and this is another way of showing inheritance where the superclasses are not on the same diagram, which is normally the case with classes from external libraries. Composite structure diagrams are used to show collaborations. A collaboration shows how a group of classes collaborate together to deliver some functionality, usually the functionality of a use case, and use cases are covered in a separate chapter. The collaboration can show the roles that classes play, and the particular classes that take on those roles in an internal compartment. The diagram here shows how three classes take on the role of model, view, and controller, a common pattern in user interface design. In class diagrams, rather than showing composition using the black diamond composition notation, it's possible to show the structure using an internal compartment, as in this example from the UML specification, which shows a car made up of 4 parts, each of which is a wheel, and each of which plays a different role, left front, right front, and so on. In our model, we could choose to show the relationship between schedule and timed event in this way, showing events as a part rather than an attribute or the name of an association role. The events part here is of the class timed event and has a multiplicity of 1 ... star. Now let's have a look at how you would change the class diagram to show the composition in this way. Here's the domain diagram from our earlier work. We'll add a new diagram to hold a composite structure. We could do it in the domain class diagram, but I don't want to change the existing model. So I select the domain package, right-click, and select Add Diagram. This is going to be a composite structure diagram, which is a UML structural diagram, the type composite structure, and I'm going to call it composite. Now I want to work with the schedule class, but I don't want to change the existing schedule, so I'm going to create a copy. I'll go into the domain diagram and select schedule and then edit and copy, and then back into the composite diagram, and I'm going to select paste element as new rather than paste element as link because I want a new class to be created. It shows me the class that I'm adding and it gives me the opportunity to change the element name, and I'm going to call this composite schedule. Now I'm going to set the visibility of this class's compartments. I right-click and select Features and Properties and then Feature and Compartment Visibility. I hid all the operations of this class in order to make it more manageable within the class diagram, so I'm going to unhide them and show them all using this part of the dialog. Over here on the right, where it says Structure Compartment, is the checkbox that I need to check in order to be able to view the structure compartment. You can see that it's put the operations back in and it's created a compartment at the bottom, which at the moment is empty. Now I'm going to drag timed event into the compartment from the project browser. When I drop it into the diagram, it asks me how I want to drop it in, and I select Property, which is the default from the drop-down list, click OK. I have to give this element a name, and I'm going to call it Events. You can see that it's added a part called Events into the class in the structure compartment. However, I now have an attribute called Events as well as a part called Events, so I'm going to delete the attribute here. I right-click on it and select Delete Selected from the model. Going back to this part, I want to show its multiplicity and type in the diagram. To set the multiplicity, I select it, right-click and select Properties, and then the Property page from the Properties dialog. I set the lower bound to 1 and the upper bound to star, as I would when I was setting the multiplicity of attributes. I'm also going to set the multiplicity to be ordered. You can see that it's now showing the multiplicity of the part called Events. I also want to show the class name alongside the name of the part. To do that, I right-click, select features and properties, feature and compartment visibility. And here, towards the bottom right, where it says type, I check the checkbox that says show element type. So I now have a part called events of the type timed event with a multiplicity of 1 ... star. Before we finish this movie, I'm going to do some tidying up in the model. In UML models, we use packages to organize and structure the model. This isn't a very large model, but I could organize different groupings of classes in different packages. For now, I'm going to create a couple of packages, one for devices and one for enumerations. In the project browser, I right-click on Domain and select Add a Package. I'll call this one Devices. I don't want to create a diagram within it, so I select Package Only. You can see that it's added in the Devices package underneath the Domain package in the project browser. I'm going to do the same for enumerations. Now, in the project browser, I can drag the relevant items into these packages. To start with, I'll select Open Close Device, On Off Device, and Device, and drag them into the Devices package. In the project browser, you can use the Control button and the Shift button in conjunction with the mouse buttons in order to select multiple items, as you would in Windows Explorer, for example. I'll do the same for the enumerations. I have 3 enumerations: operator, device action, and device state, and I'll drag them into the enumerations package. You can see the plus signs that have appeared alongside the names of the packages. If I open up enumerations, you can see it has the 3 enumerations inside that package. To show the structure of packages, I can create a package diagram. In the domain package, I'm going to right-click and select Add Diagram. And this time I'm going to select a UML package diagram. I'm going to call it Domain Overview. Now I can drag those 2 packages into the diagram from the project browser, Devices and Enumerations. And when I drop them in, I select Package Element from the menu of choices that it gives me for both. You can see for each of these packages, it's now showing a package in the diagram, and it's showing the contents, the elements that are inside each of those packages. We can do the same at the level of the class view. I right-click here, select Add a Diagram, Add a Package Diagram, and I'm going to call this Package Overview. And I'm going to drag the domain package into this diagram. I select Package Element again. You can see that it shows the domain package with all its contents in terms of classes, interfaces, and the 2 sub-packages, devices and enumerations, that I've added. If we now go to the home network diagram, you can see that for device and on-off device and open-close device, which we've moved into a separate package, it's showing the package name as part of a fully qualified name for those classes. That's fine where there's only 1 or 2 packages, but where there's a long and complex package hierarchy, this can become unwieldy, so we can switch it off. I'll select the diagram properties. I go to the diagram page and uncheck the Show Namespace checkbox. You can see that the names of the packages have disappeared from those classes. So let's review what we've added to the class diagrams in this chapter. Here in the domain diagram, we've added more information to associations and other relationships, including ownership information and constraints. We've also added constraints in notes. We've added association classes for those classes where the additional data belongs to the association and not to either of the classes at the ends of the association, as here between sensor and triggered event. Here in the events diagram, we've added an interface and an enumeration. Interfaces allow us to define a set of operations that certain classes must implement. Enumerations allow us to define a set of permitted values as a type. And we've used the internal structure approach to showing composition rather than using the composition relationship in a diagram. Finally, we've reorganized the model using packages and used package diagrams to show the contents of those packages.